Good morning and welcome to Today in LA. I'm Mike Amos, and with me today, one of my good friends, Noel Hollis, known as Noel, one of the great artists in the country today, and he's going to be on our show for an hour and 30 minutes. Noel, good to see you, my friend.
Michael, it's good to be back in Troy.
I told you to hitch up down there. Grab that wire right there. Just grab that wire and bring it to you. Yeah, I know you've been in Starlights many times, so just attach it to your lapel. Of course, Noel, ladies and gentlemen, the renowned artist known as Noel, and of course we're going to be talking to him. And Noel, give everybody out there a reason for you to be in town.
I have a talk today at the Arts Center on my life.
Oh, great.
So I'm supposed to, they called up and they said, why don't you come and talk about your life? I said, which one?
Yeah, which one?
So we drove up yesterday. They sent somebody down to get me because I hate to drive. And got here and stayed out here at the college and had dinner last night in Troy at that B. Gray.
Yeah, B. Gray, yeah. Good restaurant, isn't it?
Delicious food.
Yeah. It is a great restaurant, no question. Located in downtown Troy on the square. And they opened it up just for you, no?
They did. There was nobody else. It was closed on Monday. But,
and, of course, we appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, if I get... we're going to bounce around quite a bit. I've known this guy all his life, and he's known me pretty much all my life.
Except for 1 year.
Even though I might have been,
you're old.
Even though I might have been a little bit on the other side of the tracks. I was on the other side of Pine Hill, and he lived over in Hillcrest. He lived over there where all those rich folks and all those alcoholics live. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Back in the old days, man, if you weren't an alcoholic, you weren't very cool.
You weren't invited anywhere. Nobody would want to go anywhere if they weren't serving drinks.
That's about true, isn't it?
Oh, well, it is true.
And of course, a great place to live still in Troy is that part of town, and but we're going to be jumping back and forth talking about. Not only about what he's here for at the Arts Center, but to talk about his life as an artist and how he's been all over the world with his art. And, he's met some of the most prestigious people in the world. And, of course, all you do is to go down to Point Clear, and gosh, man, you own every wall down there. How did you do that?
Well, David Bronner in Montgomery asked me if I would sling some of my paintings up at the Grand Hotel, and I said sure. So I ended up slinging paintings in all of the RSA hotels.
Yeah, that's right. In Montgomery, everywhere.
Hanging them in the rooms and doing lithographs. So it was a really great guy. Yeah. And a great
David Bronner had not come to Montgomery, it'd be some little old P-Dunk town.
Yeah. He's done,
downtown, it would have never rebounded if David Bronner had not been in Montgomery.
He's done a lot for Montgomery, for Alabama.
No question. And of course, evidently, y'all are very good friends. Mm-hmm. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, Noel is originally from Troy, born in Troy in 1948. You didn't know that, did you?
1948. But I lived on Murphy Street, and my two grandparents lived on Murphy Street.
That's right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you picture this. Coming off North 39th Street, coming from town, you take a left on Murphy Street. Of course, the first left would have been the First Baptist Church on West College Street.
And that was our church.
That's right. And you made several paintings.
Murphy Cemetery across the street next door. And my grandfather his mother was a Murphy.
Yeah.
Murphy Park.
Murphy Park, no question about it. You played for Murphy Park's football team, too. You remember that?
The Pee Wee.
That's right. You're a pretty good little running back.
Yeah, I was there. Now I get around on my cane.
I told him we were coming in tonight. He was moving around sort of decrepit. We use that word decrepitly. And I said, no, man, at one time you had running back legs, man, when you played at Murphy Park.
Well, the years has a way of doing things to our bodies that is not all that pleasant. but we manage until we can't, until
Yeah.
we're
All right,
horizontal.
during this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking back and forth about the arts and talking about Nall's life. And I'm going to throw names out there, Nall, throughout the whole show of people, some of them that are still living and some of them that are still dead. And we're going to reflect on some of them. You might not remember
And
some
of them have rejuvenated.
Yeah, some of them have rejuvenated.
They've risen from the dead.
And if Jacqueline's not up, call her and we'll get her on the phone. And
Hey,
of course,
Jacqueline.
and of course,
And Carol.
That's right, Carol and Jacqueline, my wife Carol, and all of them grew up in the same neighborhood and went to the same church pretty much, wasn't you? You went to church back then, didn't you?
Yeah, I was at the Baptist church.
That's
and
right, First Baptist.
I don't remember who was in the church.
Dr. Ammerman was the preacher. You remember him, Claude T. Ammerman?
I remember the name, yeah.
They had a house for him down there on West College Street.
Uh-huh.
They had the patronage, whatever you call it.
I was able to avoid church when I could.
Where
like
you?
Most kids.
Yeah, I know it. You ought to be, but you don't now, though. You can't wait to go to church.
I love to go to church now.
I know you do.
Yeah, I do. I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
We have a great pastor. It's a non-denominational church. It's in Fairhope, and I'm good friends with the pastor, Brad.
Uh-huh.
And
It's Episcopalian? What church?
it's non-denominational.
Oh, non-denominational. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought for sure that you would have been going to a church where they allowed you to partake.
Oh, we do partake.
Okay.
But they bring
You know how
they bring it to
what do they
us.
call those Episcopal folks? What do they call them? Episcopalian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, that's a beautiful church around Fairhope. That's where your home is now.
I live in Fairhope, and I still have my place in France, but my ex-wife and my ex-mistress are living over there in the same foundation. There are several houses there, and they kind of bump into each other in the parking lot and exchange daggers.
Yeah, no question. Now, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. You have a beautiful museum here on the Troy University campus, and you've done a lot of things to enhance the culture of life around these parts. I remember I went to your second wedding years ago. You remember that down in the woods?
The vows.
Exactly. I should have had pictures of me and the mayor. And everybody had to wear white. You remember that?
Yeah.
And you had a second marriage wedding down there.
That was a lot
Married,
of fun.
married the same woman twice. Is that right?
Well, we didn't marry. It was a renewal of the vows.
Yeah.
Is that marrying twice?
Yeah, that's right.
I guess we did.
But that was a whole weekend of a lot of fun.
It was fun.
It sure was. No question.
Janice Hawkins and Jack Chancellor and
Y'all
Ms.
become
Hawkins,
very good friends, haven't you?
Well, they had dinner with us. They invited us for dinner last night.
Yeah.
And it was so nice to be able to see them again. I don't see anyone from Troy often.
Yeah.
I stay down.
Well,
On
all
the
you got to do
coast.
is say, Mike, there's a party down here. Down there, of course, Mardi Gras is coming up down there.
Well, I usually get out of town.
Do you?
I'm going to go to San Francisco for Mardi Gras.
Well, that sounds like fun.
Well, it's north of it's in Marin County,
Uh-huh.
and it's in
So in the big
Isolated.
tree country, where they have the big, huge timbers.
they've got some big trees there, but
Yeah.
it's not the redwood,
Yeah.
the giant redwoods.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
This is more of a low key place.
Of course, let's get started with Nall this morning. Let's talk a little bit about his early life. And ladies and gentlemen, if I make this guy out to be a big, say, who is this guy Mike's raving on? This is one of the renowned artists in the world, ladies and gentlemen, and he just happens to be, believe it or not, from Troy, Alabama. And he comes back and throws us a bone every now and then. You know what I mean by that? He throws us a bone, saying, I'm going to come up and speak to you and tell us why you're here.
Well, I'm here to give a talk on my life. Janice Hawkins and Jack, Chancellor and Mrs. Hawkins at Troy University, have said, would I come up and give a lecture? And I said, on what? And they said, your favorite subject, you. I said, I can do that. I don't even have to take notes.
Yeah.
I might have to joggle the memory. It's fading a bit.
Yeah.
But other than that, life is
Yeah.
good.
Exactly. Well, you've been on this show 2 or 3 times, and or maybe more than that. And I can't see any reason to think you're going downhill.
Well, except for my
You
legs.
can still move those hands, can't you?
Not really. No, I don't work. I type a lot
Yeah.
on the computer. I'm
Okay, I
writing
understand
book.
that. Yeah, exactly.
I'm writing a story of this zigzag life.
Somebody needs to write a book about your life. Is that what you're going to do?
Well, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, good. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Of course, ladies and gentlemen, he's been there and done that. And in Europe, he's as well known in Europe as he is in Alabama, and maybe even more if you look at the some of the places you've been. And you've got property where now?
In Vence, France. It's up in the foothills of the French Alps.
Yeah.
And
Boy, is
it's,
that cold weather? Or a lot of snow or what?
No, we have about this much snow once or twice a year, and it's about like here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vence,
It's
France.
the same climate as here,
Yeah.
because that's the climate that suits
Yeah.
me, and it's a small.
Are you
town
in
like
the
Troy.
hills or are you in the mountains or what?
Well, it's the foothills of the Alps.
Okay, so Vence, you have a place in Vence. Is this
Mhm.
where your studio is?
I have a studio there and a studio in Fairhope,
Yeah, in Fairhope, Alabama. That's right.
Alabama.
Now you've been asked to paint for some of the great families in Europe. Is that right?
Well, a good friend of mine is Beatrice d'Orleans, who is the Spanish princess, and of course Prince Albert. I've done his portrait, and
Monaco. Is that
yeah.
right?
And then the Pasteur family, who own all of the high rises in Monaco, I've done their portraits, and they're like royals but without titles.
Yeah.
So it's like over here we don't have titles. So if you imagine in the day, Red Blunt and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
in Tuscaloosa, what was his name?
Bear Bryant.
Warner. Jack
Warner. Yeah, Jack Warner.
They
yeah.
would be like them
Yeah, exactly.
over there.
And of course, we're going to throw out some names of local people that you're very close to, and Trotman, Bubba Trotman. You and Bubba, what a great man he was, and he was raised right over here on West College Street.
Fabulous. He and my grandmother, well, Bubba's father and my
John
grandmother
Trotman?
were brother and sister.
Uh-huh. What now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, word.
My grandmother was a Trotman.
That's right. And that's how you kin to Randy Brown too. Is that right?
No, that's that. Well, yeah. My great aunts, there were several of those. Bebby, who lived on the corner of China Street and College Street in that beautiful white house. And then the Murphys, my grandfather's sisters, lived across the street. And then catty-corner to the McSwain house.
I got you. Now, Tom Murphy then is a cousin then. Is that right?
I'm kin to all the Murphys.
All the Murphys. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, Noel was, as we mentioned, was born here in Troy and went to school up until
Elementary school.
Elementary school, and you what, 5th, 6th grade, you moved to Birmingham.
5th grade.
You moved to
Maybe it
Birmingham,
was
is
the
that right?
6th. Yeah. Moved to Vestavia.
And they lived there how long?
We're dropping back a few years, Michael.
Yeah, I know exactly. No question about it.
I think I lived there 7 years.
Yeah.
Then moved to Homewood and went to Chase Cahaba, Homewood Junior High, then Barry, which
Barry
is now
Buccaneers,
Hoover.
and now
Hoover
Hoover.
now.
You're right, big school, Hoover. And then you went on to college at the University of Alabama. Is that
We
right?
moved to Arab, Alabama
That's right.
first, and then I moved to Tuscaloosa to go to schools. Was there for 4 years. And
Of course, your
moved-
daddy was a banker, and he was a banker in Arab. Is that right?
He opened his own bank in Arab, and within several years he had
Well, you
several
must have been
branches.
rich, no?
Well, we thought we were for a small country town.
And Arab was a unique country town too, wasn't it?
It was very unique. It was not really my choice of
Yeah.
places to live because it was a little bit racist, and that's not my ilk.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. Now, not far from Huntsville too. So you lived actually in the
Well, that's
Huntsville
where I would
area.
go to party.
Uh-huh.
I was 16 when we
That's
moved
right.
to Arab.
Yeah.
So I had my driver's license, and Daddy bought me a Corvette, a white Corvette.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
For
you
three,
had it made.
3
no
days
question.
I had it. And they caught me going through Blunsville at about 120
Oh,
miles
no.
an hour to 30 miles up.
Oh
He
no.
said, send that car back to the Chevrolet company. And he said, well, what are we supposed to do with Noel? What's he got in the car? He got his golf clubs, his tennis racket.
That's right.
He put him out on the side of the road, let him hitchhike back
Yeah.
to school.
And I remember a guy that was a friend of yours. Was it Glenn Spann? One of those Spann boys was a good friend of yours and a friend of mine. Played football at Jacksonville State, and he was a friend of mine. I went to Jacksonville for a small time.
I did know from Arab. Of course, he was a
That's
good
right.
friend.
Yeah.
I'm confusing towns.
Yeah, I know exactly. And of course, when did you realize that you had a knack for art?
Mother said that I stabbed my way out of the womb with a pencil.
Stabbed your way out of the womb with a pencil.
So I don't ever remember not drawing.
Uh-huh.
I really don't.
Even all right now, let's just see what kind of memory you got. You were in the first grade at Troy Elementary, and your first grade teacher was?
Pearl Peacock.
Pearl Peacock, exactly right. Mine was Miss Helen Cox. So there were two first grade teachers back then. Miss Ledbetter came in there and did some teaching
I
back
had her
then.
5th grade, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly. Okay, the second grade, who did you have?
Law? Was there a law?
Yeah, Miss Law.
Miss
You had
Law.
Miss Law, and I had the beautiful, beautiful Betty Riddle.
Maybe I had Riddle, and the law was
You
the
remember how
4th
pretty
grade.
she was, and then of course
Miss Rowland.
Miss Rowland was
She
the
was a
third grade.
beauty.
She sure was.
I had a crush on her.
Well, she left us not long ago, and she was a beautiful lady when she left us. Beautiful, sweet lady, no question about it. Of course, Keith Rowland, her son, lives here, and we very active.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh yeah, very
Good.
active,
Good.
and had a place up in
We had
Orion.
a lovely mother.
Yeah, got a place up in Orion, and of course, she was my third grade teacher. My fourth grade teacher, you had two choices. Who was your fourth grade teacher?
Was that Law? Or
No,
was that
Miss Law was
second?
second grade. Miss Davidson was my teacher in the
can't
fourth
remember.
grade, and she taught the Audubon Society about birds. You
No,
remember
I
that?
don't know that I had
So
her.
you had the other teacher instead of Miss Davidson. But
I must have had
today,
the
to
other
this day, because my fourth grade teacher taught the Audubon Society, I know where all the names of all the birds. My wife wouldn't begin to tell me what a red fin, yellow hammer, or a red fin blackbird, or English sparrow. Did you, back when you were growing up, did you hunt birds with BB gun?
I had my BB gun
Pump? Was it a
that
pump?
graduated into a pellet gun.
Yeah, you could kill somebody now with it.
Anyway, you could kill a lot of squirrels.
I know exactly, but back then hunting birds with a BB gun was a big
That was
deal,
the
wasn't
thing.
it?
That was the thing. We
That
were
was,
hunters.
and
We
I
were
look at it
hunters
now and I
from
say,
birth.
why did we do that?
We were
The most
crazy.
beautiful bird in the world is a bluebird.
Yeah.
And over on Orange Street,
The blue jays are beautiful.
on Orange Street, this one lady sort of raised them, and we knew not to go in there and shoot one of those bluebirds.
Well, you know, one of my great aunts, my grandfather, Fred Noll's sister, lived on the corner when you turned into Hillcrest, and she raised peacocks.
Oh,
I didn't
God.
shoot them.
Yeah.
I would go up there and watch them and look at them and find the feathers and I had a whole bunch of
Yeah.
peacock feathers.
Of course, we were talking about this later. Coming from downtown Troy, you had a left and went to the First Baptist Church. Went on down to Murphy Street and took a left and went down to the corner there at Murphy Street in a little passageway that went to Murphy Park, where the big swimming pool was. You remember that?
Oh, I sure
The
do.
big swimming pool.
But
Did
they
you
had
go
the
off the
tower.
diving board, the tower?
They
Did you
had the,
remember?
that's where I lived up there going
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
And
Well, you remember how
back.
many folks would climb up there on the tower and say, "I don't want to jump down. That's too far. I don't want to. Hey, come let me down." And that lifeguard said, "You climbed up there, you're coming down." That was the rule. Right by it said, "If you climb up, you're coming down."
Well, they never have coached me down. I was.
But I know you were. You probably doing flips and jackknives
All of
and
that-
everything.
all of that stuff.
You learned how to swim right here, didn't you?
I did. I sure did in Troy. But you know, when my grandmother lived, and her backyard extended into Murphy Park,
That's right.
and I would
That's
love
Daddy
to.
Fred. That's Daddy Fred's
No,
house.
that's Thelma Hollis.
Oh, Miss Hollis. Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
My other grandmother.
Jerry
lived-
Hollis's mother. Is that right?
Jerry's mother, and
Somebody wake Jerry up this morning and tell him that we've got Nall on our show.
tell him we're about to start talking about him. He better wake up
Exactly right.
or turn it off.
You know, Jerry was on a good football team. We'll talk about that in a minute.
He was a good football
Yeah, he
player.
sure was. And but then of course down there on the corner, your grandmama lived on the corner, and your other grandmother lived across the street.
Across the street.
Wasn't that unreal?
Lucy and
you was
Fred
spoiled
Nall.
rotten, my friend.
And I lived a block away until we moved to Hillcrest. So if I didn't get something I wanted from one, I would just go across the street and get it from them.
And your grandmother fed the whole neighborhood. And tell us about and she was a legend.
Miss Lucy,
Miss Lucy Nall, if you remember that name.
when her daughters moved out of her house, she said, well, she was a businesswoman. She was going to Europe every year and taking a group of her buddies in South Alabama, South Georgia, South Mississippi. She would take them to Europe because she knew of
Miss
all
Lucy would.
all the places to shop for laces and china and silver, and she'd go over there and bring all this junk back and antiques and things like that and have them refinished in an orphanage somewhere in Germany, and then she'd ship them back over here, and her house was full of all this stuff.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, well, Lucy, get me one of those things. Get me an armoire. Get me a chest of drawers. Get me this. Get me some chairs. And she would get all that stuff and ship it back for them.
She was a legend for so many years. Even into her 90s, she cooked. The people in the neighborhood, or older people in the neighborhood, or shut-ins, or just anybody that wanted a real good meal would go and sit down and have lunch.
Well, they would have to wait till she had a place open.
Yeah.
Because she had 3 big tables.
She made her living that way, didn't she?
Well, she made her living on anything she did. When she
Yeah.
breathed, she was working.
Yeah.
She was selling trips to Camp DeSoto and Camp Alpine
Uh-huh.
to the children.
Gave people an opportunity to go to camp.
Their children would go to camp, and the wives would go to Europe, and the husband, she would sell them life insurance.
This was the life of the rich and famous in Troy, Alabama. Is that right?
She had 5 briefcases in her trunk, and she would go and visit some of her friends here and there and all over the South, and she'd take her suitcases and oh, wait a second, I think your husband needs some life insurance. And so she'd go get that briefcase.
She sold insurance.
She sold insurance, trips to camp, trips to Europe, cruises. She rented out her houses to college students and professors here at the university. And she fed everybody, and everybody would call up, Miss Lucy, do you know, I'm so-and-so, lived 2 or 3 doors up. You know, do you have room for me to come over and
That's
eat
right, it
with
was
y'all?
limited, wasn't it?
And she had 3 tables, 12, 12, and 8, and they were packed.
And every day, what time did they eat lunch?
At noon.
At noon.
And they would all gather in the morning around 11 o'clock and gossip for at least an hour.
Well, wasn't that fun for those
It was
people?
fabulous.
Yeah.
It was a meeting place.
Sure.
It was like a restaurant that had red velvet sofas, carved wood, and antiques all over the place, and paintings.
And then across the street was your other grandmother on the other side of the family, the Hollis side, and she was a wonderful lady.
She was very sweet. She sewed. She was a seamstress for all of these people.
Did she eat with Miss Lucy, or were they friends?
She would eat over there every now and then, but she liked her privacy.
Yeah. And your granddaddy's name was Daddy Fred.
That's what I
You
call
call him Daddy Fred, yeah.
Fred Nall, Willis Fred Nall.
On the beautiful old Pontiac that you used to, when you come to town, and ride all over the
I
place.
would sit in his lap when I was about 6, and I would drive. So you can imagine how dangerous that was. And my other grandfather, Joe Hollis, was he had these gas stations in Hollis Oil Company, and I would drive those gasoline trucks sitting in his lap. And here I was, could hardly see over the dashboard, driving a gasoline.
Yeah, exactly. But, during that time, that you lived in Troy, of course, I'm sure that you spent most of your time over at your grandmama's, going back and forth, and you ate there. The food, you always had a good meal, did you?
I was always eating.
And then you weren't but a few hundred yards from Murphy Park. During that time, the only recreation park in Troy. It had a big swimming pool that they had to empty the water twice a week.
They had a baby pool and a big pool.
That's right.
And I started out at, I guess, the age of whatever,
That's right.
this big,
exactly.
swimming in the baby pool.
Sure.
Crawling down there, I guess, because it was just a dirt road between my grandmother's yard and Murphy Park.
That's right. Yeah.
And,
They said little Noel Hollis is in your flower bed over there, Mamie.
Oh, poor Sadie Jernigan. She lived next door.
Sadie Jernigan.
She got mad at me because I crossed the fence, which was a wire laying on the ground between her house and my grandmother's house. And she would say, "Your grandchild is over here picking my flowers. Get him out of here. You can't do that. I'm going to call the police." And so I got mad at her, and I would stomp her flowers. I'd go over there and just stomp them down to nothing. Ruthie Selman and I would.
Ruthie Selman, you had some real stories about you and Ruthie Selman.
Well, I'm sure they were all true. We were
I love
great.
Ruthie Selman.
We were in love. That was my childhood.
Of course, Miss Selman's, the Selmans live down the street. Tell us some more people that live there. The Selmans live just about 3 or 4.
Alan Dotson and Joe, the Dotsons, they lived across the street and across the street and down a couple of houses toward town. And Perry and Carrie Green,
That's
they
right.
lived
Joe Dotson right across the street, yeah.
Pine Hill.
That's right, on Orange Street, yeah.
And my mother would go to Green's Drugs and have her 3 or 4 Coca-Colas, I guess, for the caffeine in it. She was not a coffee drinker. She liked Coke. And she'd get all coked up. And,
but back then all these people were playing cards. They were playing
bridge.
Bridge, yeah, exactly. And they say you are quite a bridge player.
I love to play.
You play with Bebe right now, don't you?
Bebe and Ken Hendricks. Bebe had.
How's Ken doing?
Ken's doing good.
Good.
He had some heart problems, but he's good. Yeah. And their daughter, Allison Jackson.
Oh, she's wonderful, isn't she?
She's fabulous, beautiful.
Yeah.
Vivacious.
I met her last year at a wedding.
I just love her to death. We play bridge.
Oh, I've known her for years, but I saw her again this past summer.
And she kind of takes care of me. When I'm living, I have an apprentice that lives there.
In fact, she married a guy from Luverne, a lucky guy.
Andalusia.
Andalusia. Well, no, I think his home was Luverne, I want to say.
To me, it's all
the same. Okay, yeah, exactly. Of course, your good friend, Sister Schubert, lives in Andalusia.
She does.
But this young lady from Troy and he's an attorney down there. And Allison, do you see her much?
Sid Jackson, I see her at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
They have a beautiful house with a lake behind it, and a lot of property and horses, and all their daughters.
Yeah, they're beautiful, yeah.
They have a wonderful life, and Bebe and Ken Hendricks, they live there too. So we've all kind of gravitated to Fairhope.
That's great, yeah.
So I've got family.
And of course, you play a lot of bridge still today. Did you learn how to play bridge by watching those ladies play?
Yeah.
Like Miss Elmore and some of those people?
My grandmother played bridge. My parents played bridge. Everybody was playing bridge.
Yeah.
And I was always sitting.
And a lot of them are drinking whiskey while they play bridge. Is that right?
Woody Brown. They were all drinking whiskey. And except my grandparents.
Well, everybody back then. It seemed like everybody back then.
But they didn't drink wine. They drank bourbon.
Yeah, back then wine wasn't a big thing. Bourbon was the same.
Scotch was not big. It was bourbon.
Yeah.
Bourbon.
And if you had the right guy out of town, you could get some of that white stuff they might give you.
Moonshine.
Yeah, exactly.
That was more an Arab.
The best, you talk about moonshine, and during Christmas, you have eggnog.
Yeah.
That's where the best eggnog comes from, is that white.
Well, funny about all this alcohol.
Locally
there was so much
drink.
Alcohol when I was young that I stopped drinking 40 years ago.
Yeah. Did you really? Did you start drinking?
A sip.
Man, I didn't realize
never
that.
felt
because
better.
When some of those paintings I see that you're doing, Man, I said he's been drinking something. You know, I go in your museum all the time.
Smoking.
Or smoking some kind of left-handed cigarette or whatever. Did you do any of that at one
No.
time?
Well, yeah, at one time I did everything.
Did you?
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving now. All right, you, of course, during your high school days, you used to come here and spend time with your grandmama and them in
Yeah.
junior high, and it was like you were living in Birmingham, but you had another home in Troy. And Troy's always been a lot to you, huh?
Troy's always been home. Always been home.
Yeah, not Arab, not Birmingham, or not
No,
the
not really,
French
not really.
Riviera.
No, it's been here in Vence, France. Yeah, I do claim Vence as a
Yeah.
home.
Now, when you were in Vence, was Vence on the water?
No, it was 5 miles up.
5
I
miles
started
up.
in the old town of Nice,
Yeah.
and then from there, I got a place in Vence where I lived, and then got married, and my wife had a place in Monaco, so we would go from Monaco to Vence, Monaco to Vence, and she had a farm in Italy, and then we would go from Italy, from Parma, Italy, we would drive over to Venice. So that whole, the Italian and the French Riviera were kind of my stomping grounds.
Your wife came from old.
Oh, she's a baroness from 17 generations back, and
Yeah.
they had 25 old big farms all over where they raised cattle and pigs. So they were in the Parmesan ham and Parmesan cheese business.
Oh boy, yeah.
So we could get these big rounds of
Beauty,
cheese.
that part of the world is just simply gorgeous, isn't it?
Well, it's beautiful, and she was beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful women. The
I
first
went.
time I
I know.
saw
I
her,
went to your wedding. Out here.
the first one and the second one.
The one that we had out here, the museum on the.
And that was the
Bible.
renewal of the vows.
The renewal of the vows.
10
yeah,
years.
That's where I went.
We
Yeah.
had made it through 10, and we signed on for another 10.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And of course, through her, and through your art, you met a lot of well-to-do folks and a lot of famous folks.
Well, I made a career, and that's how she found me, because I was famous on the Riviera, and she had just moved down there from Paris.
Yeah.
So I would introduce her to everybody I knew, and some of them loved her, some of them couldn't stand her, but that's the way it is with couples.
We're
But
talking about
she was
royalty.
a wonderful, wonderful person.
We're talking about royalty in the French Riviera, and everybody there knew you. But let's go back a little bit here. You went ahead and finished at Hoover High School, then went to the University of Alabama, and did you go ahead and graduate, or what did you do?
Well, I went to Arab for 2 years.
Arab High School.
High
yeah.
school, and then from there I went to the University of Alabama.
Exactly.
Pledged Sigma Nu fraternity. Judd Colley was
That's
the
right.
Sigma Nu, and he
That's
said,
right.
"You're
Alan Jones and
you're pledged
Steve
Sigma
Flower.
Nu."
Yeah, that's right. And several Troy guys were in.
Yeah, they were, and from Dothan and Ozark.
Sure.
And where Enterprise.
Yeah.
A lot of Sigma Nu's down
Sure.
here.
Sure. And of course, so you had a great time in college.
That was fun, but it was still like living in Troy because
Yeah.
there was so many people.
But
down
at this
here.
time, though, when did you start? Now you were at Alabama. And what did you get your degree? I know your daddy was a banker, and he wanted you to be a banker. Is that right?
And I said, "You've got to be kidding. For what? I'm going to inherit the bank. Why would I want to study
That's right.
banking?"
Yeah, and that was Bank Arab.
Well, no, that was another. It was Security Bank and Trust Company. It was competitor with
Sure.
Bank of Arab.
I got you.
So he
That was
opened
his
up.
the bank he owned. Is that right?
Well, he owned 51% of the
Yeah, I
stock.
got
I think at the end he bought up.
Yeah.
Started it, and
So you were a rich kid, didn't know what you wanted to do.
I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to party and paint.
Yeah, party and paint. That sounds
That's
like
what
fun.
And so then I stopped partying at 33 and had been painting up until 2 years ago. And now I'm putting together collections of the donations of things that I've given to Troy, to the University of Alabama.
Exactly. You tried to be a banker and you didn't like it, so then you started to art full time. When did you realize that you had big time ability
I have
to
no-
paint? I mean,
I guess when I
there's painters everywhere, but then they're great painters, and you're a great painter.
I guess I started working with this a beautiful Palestinian. She looked like Cleopatra. She wore a turban and these beautiful embroidered dresses, Juliana Seraphim. And
Was she overseas or in the United States?
I met her in Paris, and we
Yeah.
became intimate friends. And
All right, first of all, how did you, when did you make the break to go all the way to Europe to study art? You were still in the studying
well, my
phase, wasn't you?
sister, she was a very instrumental part.
That was Merle, yeah.
Merrill Hollis. She studied and majored in foreign languages at Auburn.
Yeah.
She could speak French and German and Italian, Spanish. And so she would go to Spain, and then she said, I would go to Mexico with her when I was 13, 14, 15, and she was my, what do you call those, chaperone.
Sure,
You
yeah.
can imagine an 18-year-old chaperoning a 13-year-old.
Yeah,
And we would go to Mexico and have a great time. She fell in love with a bullfighter, the most famous in the world, El Cordobés.
Really? Okay.
And that was her boyfriend.
Really?
And when he was
Yeah.
fighting bulls
Yeah.
in Madrid, we'd go to Madrid and see him. In Mexico, we'd go and see him. And that was
Yeah.
fun.
And then of course, you knew that this is what you want to do, and you went to Europe and you studied under one of the well-known artists of all
Salvador
time.
Dali, yeah.
I mean, and he's in there with, there's a lot of great artists. He'd be in the top, say, 10, 15, or 20.
He was number one in Europe with Picasso. It was kind of a battle that you were
With-
either Picasso or you were Dali.
And Picasso wasn't alive back then, though, was he?
Sure, he was alive.
He was still alive?
Yeah. I had a choice. The Viscount Patrice Danicon.
You mean that
Philidor.
Picasso on that wall belonged to somebody that was still living?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I was given the choice by a Viscount, Patrice Danicon Philidor Dupont. He said, would you like to study with a master? You need to. And I said, a master what? He said, artist, you fool. And I said, sure, why not? Who? He said, well, I'm very good friends. He was writing a book on Hemingway. And he said, well, I've got some buddies, and Pablo Picasso and Salvador Dali are my good friends. And I said, really? Well, I would die if I could meet Dali.
I know. See, it was who you knew, wasn't it? I mean, art had a lot to do with who you knew. Is that right?
Everything that has come to me has come through relations.
Yeah, sure.
Friendships with people.
Yeah.
Relations.
And you were a young man from Alabama, and you got to, and when you told your friends that you were working under Salvador Dali, I mean,
Well, that was like a passport into any high society.
yeah,
That Dali's is your mentor. You're his student. And so the doors just...
what kind of person was Dali?
He was very reserved with his little mustache, and he played it. He played the mustache, he played the cane, but he had beautiful sculpted gold handle canes. And
Was he a very wealthy man?
Velvet. Of course he was wealthy.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, his paintings were valuable, and all the great art collectors in the world probably would love to have a Dali.
Well, yeah, I've got a few myself, and he signed all the books that.
And that's really with his signature and everything. It's really worth a
He
bunch
would do
of
a
money.
beautiful little drawing in the, the opening 2 pages, and then he'd sign it to the genius Null is the one that I love to repeat.
And of course, y'all became close friends. And did you think a lot of him?
I thought he was a super guy.
Yeah.
Because, well, I mean, he was a famous artist, and he was a wonderful artist. I didn't like Picasso.
But to be able to get in there and work with him was something that everybody would love to have done,
Well, I think people would have
Any
killed
inspiring
to do
artist,
it. They would have killed to do it.
Yeah, sure. So you really felt like you were fortunate. This one guy got you
Going
in.
to the École de Beaux-Arts, the major art school in France, in Paris, when I would tell them where I would go, I'm going to the Hotel Maurice to work, and to draw. Dolly's going to pose for me today. Oh, can we go? And everybody started buddying up with me, and I would say, well, we'll see. Maybe you.
But you got
this
to be
week.
well known, and you got to know a lot of people, and that was one of the keys to your success. Is that right?
Everything I've done has been a key to my success, but that was one of the great ones.
Yeah. Of course, tell us the kind of art that you were doing back in the early days, and then later I want to get into the art that you're doing today, and what inspired you to do the kind of art you do today.
I think the drawing that I have that I kept from childhood was done when I was about 6 or 11 or something like that, and it was the head of a horse.
Yeah.
And then I just recently did another head of a horse, the same composition, but the technique is a lot better.
Yeah.
And it has watercolor bridle and all that stuff in it. But it was like going through one's life and saying what was important to me. My father was an artist. He did beautiful drawings.
You mean Joe Hollis was an artist?
He was the first chair in Tuscaloosa with the bass trombone.
Okay, at the University of Alabama.
Musician. Mother was a musician. She played the snare drums. And that's how they got hooked up. Of course, they lived
You mean
close.
Nail? What was her name?
Mary.
Mary.
Mary Knoll.
But they grew right across the street from each other,
Yeah,
didn't they?
that's what you did. That's who you did.
What was her maiden name?
Knoll.
No, that's right. No, but I mean, they grew up. Were they close to each other when they were growing up?
Now, Daddy was dating her cousin from Ozark, Mary Liv Trotman.
Yeah.
And was her cousin.
Who later on was one of the
Carols
big family
from
Carols.
Ozark.
Yeah, the Carols from Ozark.
She married Sammy
Yeah,
Carroll.
you had the Hendersons of Troy and the Carols of Ozark. Carroll Hardware, Hotel Grocery.
Yeah. Carroll everything.
Yeah.
And Carroll High School,
Yeah,
Carroll
that's
this,
right.
Carroll
A lot
that.
of Ozark people watching this show this morning.
So the Carrolls and the Murphys and the Trotmans, there were several families that kind of,
So, but
kinda
he had known
clicked
your
together.
mother all his and her
all their
life.
lives, all their lives.
All their lives.
Yeah.
Did they ever realize that? Was there ever boyfriend or girlfriend back then?
Well, they wouldn't tell. You didn't kiss.
Well,
I mean, kiss and
I know,
tell
but,
then.
but like through high school and all that, were they boyfriend girlfriend, or did they later on when they were at the University of Alabama?
No, it was then. They didn't go to college. Mother didn't go to college until later. She went to 2 years at Troy, and
Yeah, I
Daddy
got
went to
you, yeah.
LSU School of Banking later on.
exactly.
But then they just went into their careers. Daddy was working up here at the
So
First
they were
National Bank.
all right, yeah. So they were high school sweethearts. Then,
I
is
think
that right?
Daddy was more in love with Mother's cousin,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, from Ozark.
who I think lived up the street
Yeah.
on College Street.
John Mills, a good friend of mine, his family was a bunch of dentists down there, were also related to that group of people.
Well, they
yeah.
all stuck
Will
together.
Matthews, the guy that calls on our show all the time, might call in this morning. Will is from Ozark, and his mother was a Carroll.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the cats, Sam Carroll and Trot Carroll and Lottie were
That's
friends
right.
of mine. And in fact, Sam pledged Sigma Nu at
Sure.
university because of me, and I would, his big brother and
Yeah,
all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And, the family stuck together.
Yeah, exactly. No question about it. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Noel. We're going to take a short break and let him have time to breathe. And but ladies and gentlemen, coming back, and we're going to talk more about Noel and his world and of art, and we're going to get involved with what makes this guy one of the great artists in the world on today in LA. Call your friends on Facebook across the world. The nation and across the world on Facebook this morning. 1 billion people could watch us. You know that?
Good.
On Facebook.
2 billion, 3
We'll be
billion.
right back.
At the Piggly Wiggly, we proudly support our local farmers and bring you the best they have to offer, all at cost plus 10%. When you shop local, you reinvest in your community. Remember, buy local, shop local. Piggly Wiggly, local since forever.
Trojan Auto Parts of Troy, home of Napa Know-How. Stop by and see owners Mike and Melissa Kilcrease and their Napa Know-How team with over 100 years of combined experience. We're the only locally owned parts store in Pike County, and we're fully stocked and ready to serve you. We pride ourselves on being your go-to parts store, not only for the simple items, but we specialize in those hard-to-find items as well. Trojan Auto Parts, the right part at the right price at the right time. Napa, a name you've trusted here in Troy since 1945.
Know-how, Napa know-how. price, big selection, and really big deals. It's the big pre-owned sale. Only at Premier Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Pre-owned vehicles start at $29.95. Over 50 vehicles under $15,000. $29 down. And you can drive today or take advantage of payments starting at $99 a month. That's $29 down. And payments starting as low as $99. From Montgomery to Dothan, the best pre-owned deal are at Premier Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram or online at PremierChrysler.com. Nobody beats a Premier deal. Nobody.
At Marguerite's, we've been designing and crafting custom jewelry for 4 generations. It's an art for master jewelers. There's really no room for error. It doesn't matter how big the diamond is. You don't expect anything less than perfection. What matters is quality, beauty, and value. After all these decades, your engagement ring is still our greatest pride. Marguerite's exquisite jewelry.
A personal touch, a high level of trust. Whether it's checking and savings accounts, personal or business loans, or our local friendly service. That's what Troy Bank and Trust customers expect. But now we offer more. Free identity theft protection for our new and existing customers, protecting your family's time, money, and good name from identity theft. Because protecting your identity is now a big part of our identity.
Wife can watch us. Ladies and gentlemen, back to our show, brought to you by Circle Insurance in Ozark, one of the larger insurers in the Ozark area, and we appreciate Sam Judah and all the great people. Also, Dixieland Dental, located 9 miles north of Dothan on the Highway 231, Dr. Michael Precise, Dr. John Strength, Dr. Damon Strength, and Dr. Robert Precise makes up one of the largest dental clinics in Alabama. Did you know that your ex-wife could actually watch you live on TV right now?
Which one?
Well,
Both?
Yeah, the one in
France?
Yeah.
Well, I have another ex-wife from Sheffield.
From Sheffield, Alabama?
Who is Teresa Burt. Her father was a Judge Burt up there, Leonard Burt.
Yeah.
She's living now with her new husband in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
She came down and visited me a month ago, stayed a week, and we had a great
have a great time?
I put her up at the hotel in Point Clear, the Grand Hotel, which is RSA, David Brunner, yet again.
In fact, you're in all the grand hotels, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most beautiful, the Renaissance and all those.
In Montgomery.
You have a lot of wonderful, wonderful art in all of those places.
He was very instrumental in my career in Alabama. David Brunner was, as was Jack Hawkins, who introduced me to David Brunner.
Exactly right.
So it all comes back to Troy.
Exactly right, and David Bronner's a great guy, no question about it. And without his vision, and of course, the Chancellor talks about vision all the time, and nobody could have done what he's done with Troy University. And of course, he's a wonderful guy to go with it. But he was a man that appreciated the arts and appreciates, and of course, his lovely wife,
Janice.
and
she is such a
people
lady.
that appreciate
Beautiful.
arts are the reason we have this magnificent art museum on our campus. And of course, Noel has been very good to put a lot of your art in that museum.
Well, I mean, it came from here in the genes.
Yes, no question.
So it's going to come back to here.
That's right. And of course, you want a lot of what you've done in the art world to be able to be seen right here on Troy University's campus.
Well, yeah, it feels home here. When Chancellor Hawkins called me in France and he said, "No, you need to come back home and come here and teach some of these kids, share your techniques and your experiences with some of our students." And I said, "Why not?" So I came over here and he said, "You can be artist in resident." And then after a year of artist in residency here at Troy, he said, "Would you like to be permanent artist in residence?" And I said, "Do you know, I really enjoy living in France as well, in Italy and wherever, traveling."
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll come back next year and then we'll see. But he was the one that really rebonded me to Troy.
Yeah. You know,
Chancellor
after,
and his wife.
you know, of course, after you established yourself under Dali and you went out on your own and had your own studio and have probably as well known in Europe as you are in the United States as far as your popularity. But when did you feel like that, you know, or get to the point that you felt like you were as good as anybody at what you did?
Well, the thing is, my father being a banker,
Yeah.
and my grandmother, Noll, being a businesswoman.
Lucy, no, yeah.
Lucy. They always instilled in me the idea that whatever you do, it's got to be a business. So you know, we don't want an artist hanging around painting on
Sure.
the weekends
Yeah.
and degenerating.
Yeah.
We don't want one of those.
Exactly.
And so I realized that if I was going to be an artist, I had to do something
That's right, yeah.
and make some money.
Yeah.
So I started making money and traveling with it.
Yeah.
You know, I'd sell a painting and I'd go to Africa. I'd sell a painting and go to South America. Sell a painting and go to Austria.
And let me ask this: most of your clients were rich, is that right?
Well, they had to be because they couldn't afford paintings.
That's right.
Otherwise, you know,
How did you know how much to charge for your paintings?
well, I
always
started
wondered
out
that.
at the very bottom,
Yeah,
$100,
yeah.
and then
Boy, some people really got a deal when they got
if you
paid.
sell everything that you're doing, you're charging too little.
Yeah,
So you raise your prices and you keep raising them until you don't sell everything, which up until now has, you know.
you know, people wonder all the time, and all they got to do is go in the museum here on the Troy University campus, and it's open. 7 days a week? I think the museum's open.
I don't know. I don't
But
come to Troy.
how in the world did you end up coming up with this bird that you did?
The Villa de Pax, the Wounded Peace. It was, you know, I'm trying to think. How did that happen? Well, the bird of peace is a dove. And
Sure.
I used to go dove hunting. Of course,
That's right.
this is a white pigeon.
Yeah.
It's not really a dove. And there was the square, the main square in Vence, you know, like in Venice, you've
Sure,
got thousands
sure.
of pigeons. And in Vence, you've got the same thing. Pigeons flock into towns and they eat what people throw on the ground.
That's right.
So I would go to this main square every day and have my coffee, sit there in the outdoor cafe and have coffee, and all the pigeons would run up and I'd have bits and pieces of croissant that I would throw to them. And there was one pigeon, a white pigeon, that was my favorite one, and I would call him and he would go and he'd fly and sometimes land on the table, and I would feed him. And I asked him, I said, would you like to pose? And he said, yes. And so there was this little Arab kid, and I said, would you take this pigeon and bring me his skull for posterity? Because I was going to do a big painting. And I did, I mean, he was not a friend. He was out after the food.
Yeah. Hold on a second. We got a call coming in. We lost him, but go ahead. Keep.
And so he brought me the skull, and I used that for a model. After drawing him many, many times for a year or two, then he was getting old, and he had a foot that was a lame foot, and he would hobble around, and when he couldn't hobble too much anymore, then that's when I decided to have this little Arab kid bring me his skull, and I used the skull to paint. In fact, when I did one of the operas for the Puccini Foundation in Pietrasanta, Torre del Lago, I used the skull, and they blew it up. It was like 22 feet long
yeah,
and yards.
Sure.
22 yards long, 8 yards tall, projected behind an opera called, what was that? I forget the name.
Yeah, I understand.
Girl of the Golden West.
forget
It was
a lot
the
of names.
second one.
Yeah,
It was the
exactly.
second one.
Go ahead.
La Rondine,
Yeah.
the swallow. And even though it was a pigeon skull, I used the dove or the pigeon
Yeah.
as a swallow skull, because nobody's going to know the
But
difference.
you see that bird out there is located behind the museum, and of course the beautiful Hawkins Park there. You know,
Oh, that
and-
was
which is
wonderful.
beautiful, and then but your bird can be seen from all pretty much different areas on campus.
Yeah.
really is unique.
It's a beautiful
But now you've got
placement.
you've got two of them actually. You got one of them, then you got one of them over there on behind buildings and grounds. Did you know that?
A dove?
No, yeah, one of your doves, yeah.
Do you know I sent one from Monaco. I sent that one over. I shipped
Yeah.
it over to Troy.
Yeah, that's right.
And I thought it was going to go to Montgomery.
Well, I think what I'm saying is, I think you've got two doves on campus.
Well, it'll eventually fly
we're
up
right
to
over there.
Montgomery.
We're right
It'll
over
fly
there.
up to Montgomery
But ladies and
eventually.
gentlemen, we're having fun. We've got Noel Hollis. Noel, the artist Noel, is on our show, and of course, one of the famous artists, not only in the United States but throughout the world now. And of course, his paintings are in very distinguished places across the world. But when did you feel like that you were on top? Don't you feel like you're on top now of the art world?
Well, I feel like I'm waning because I'm getting older, and you've got young artists and very talented kids coming
Yeah.
up.
Let me ask this: you got to be able to throw a football, with a spin on it. You got to be able to throw a baseball 80, 90 miles an hour, which is a God-given thing. It's you don't learn that.
Yeah.
Is art a God-given thing, or
Most
is it
definitely.
something that you actually
Yes.
can learn?
I was always the one that anybody, any group, they would say, "Oh, get Noel to draw it. He draws really good." And in school, in every class, they would get Noel to do this. He's an artist. So I was an artist from birth.
So you were a 95 mile an hour artist, is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah.
God gave you the ability to sit down and draw art. Now, you haven't done a lot of. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to say you haven't done a lot of painting people, but you've done plenty of that.
When I did the
with
playing
them,
cards?
Yeah.
When I did the playing cards, there was 12 face cards to do, and then the jokers, that's 13,
Yeah.
14. I did playing. I've been doing portraits kind of as bread and butter,
Yeah.
and have really met some very, very interesting people that way.
Yeah. Your playing cards, that's quite unique. And now you can get copies of those, is that right?
You can buy those.
Yeah.
You can buy those online
Yeah,
through
you
me.
think there's anybody in this country playing bridge with your cards?
Well, they won't play bridge with them because they get stuck looking at
Oh,
it.
do they? I know it. That's right.
And they forget their bids and
Yeah.
things like that. They say, "We can't
Course-
play with your cards,
Of course,
bridge."
I didn't mean to say that you haven't done a lot of portraits. It's because you have, and a lot of them you go through your museum. How you come up with some of these things that it's all about vision. What do you visualize? Do you visualize what you're going to paint before you paint it, or do you start painting
I think
and
that
it just comes
is
to you?
a gift from Murphy Street. We call it the Murphy Street disease.
Yeah.
And it's this imagination, this madness that goes on. Maybe from the water in Troy, maybe from the creek down
Yeah.
past the pool in Murphy Park.
Exactly.
It's the Murphy Street disease. In fact, in Bebe had Hendrix, and I always said, "We got Murphy Street disease. We're just crazy," and that's okay. If you are a little bit off center, and you can use that peculiarity and exploit it, that's all it is.
Yeah. Of course, you grew up playing in those woods down there. I played in those woods, but let me tell you, we always went through those woods to go in the pool at night. Sneak in the pool. I
Yeah.
know you've done that probably
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Sneak in the city pool, and then when we hear that door slam up there, that meant that the guy, Mr. Walker, was coming down there at us. So then we ran through those woods back to our
Yeah.
camping out place.
Well, I loved the Murphy Park because of the arts and craft
Yeah,
pavilion.
the bracelets.
That's where I spent most of my time.
Yeah.
I'd go to my grandmother's house, go
Yeah.
out the back door and
And
shoot
you would
down
make
to the-
lanyards. You would make them. Is that right?
bracelets?
Yeah, the bracelets
Yeah.
and the lanyards. For necklaces. Is that what you did?
We'd do all that stuff.
Yeah,
And weave baskets.
yeah. But so you found out at an early age that you were good. Is that right?
Thanks to Murphy Park
Yeah.
and my father. And, you know. Then finally, when I was in high
But when you were
school,
a wild buck growing up, though, did you have time for art then?
oh sure, I'd get nude models.
You would?
Sure,
How'd you do that?
I'd sneak them in my house. Go up.
And how much would you have to pay
go
them?
up- Pay them. I didn't. Paid in skin.
Oh boy! Well, I tell you, and then of course you leave here, go to Europe, and under Dali, who was a personality in his own right.
Oh yeah.
Did Dali, he's not living now, though.
No, he died. He died years ago.
Yeah, and of course, but y'all were very close,
We were.
and through him you met all the great painters in Europe. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I met the ones that I wanted to meet.
I mean, do y'all get along? I mean, were you actually competing for that dollar? That
No,
dollar?
no.
You weren't?
My prices were like one, and his were 1,000.
Yeah, I know, but later on, after he was, and you were trying to make a living in the art world over in Europe, at one time you were competing against another artist about who was going to get that guy's money. You know?
He was in a different league.
Yeah.
He was always in a league at the very, very top. In my league, I've tried to keep the prices low enough to sell everything and high enough to live like I wanted to live.
Of course, you got married, and of course, you've been married twice, and you got married while you were over in Europe, and you married into a well-to-do family, historical.
The Parmesan
significant.
cheese and ham business.
Yeah, So, and of course, we met her, and
Tusha.
partied with her, and everybody loved her
Yeah.
here. And was that hard for you to break up?
Well, we really haven't broken. She's living
You still
with
see her
my
alive?
ex-mistress in my house in France.
Wait a minute, she's living with your
Ex-mistress.
ex-mistress
Vanya.
in France. Okay.
So Tusha and Vanya they're having wars every day, but still they share the same property.
What do they war over? Just
Being the favorite.
yeah, being the favorite. So you still communicate with them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I communicate with the mistress more than I do the wife because the wife actually had to lose something.
Yeah.
Her number one position.
I know this, that you love dogs and you love
Oh, yeah.
pets, and you've had wonderful dogs, and we can see it in your art. Has that been tough to paint your little dogs, and then eventually they go away?
Well, I usually have more than one, so if one drops off, it's
Yeah.
sad.
You still
and
have them? Still have dogs?
I still have Biscuit.
Yeah.
I just have one now, Biscuit, and if I get another dog, he is so jealous. He just,
How old is Biscuit?
he's 14 or 16. I'm not
yeah.
sure which.
But they've been a big part of
He
your
won't
life.
tell
though.
me his age.
Yeah. Animals have been a big part of your life, though. I
Oh
think.
yeah, always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. All right. Now, when you got to the point, and ladies and gentlemen, not only is this guy a great artist, but you do sculpture and all that. But is your frames is what so many people just really that I think sort of makes you have a little step ahead of everybody else. You're so talented with your frames.
Well, when you're drawing and you fill up a sketchbook and you've got to frame them to put them in a show, and if in the beginning you're poor and you don't have the money for frames, so you go to the framing shops and you say, have you got some scraps?
But when you're looking at you go to your museum, and you can go into his museum today, and it is fabulous, and you can see what goes through this guy's head. You wonder sometimes. I was wondering if you might have been smoking a little bit when you were doing some of your art.
Well, no, I don't smoke and draw
Oh, you know?
because you can't. Your hands
Yeah,
just
I understand that.
freeze.
I understand that. I didn't mean that literally. Go ahead.
So, well, I mean, you could have.
Yeah, sure.
And it was a
Yeah.
valid question because
Yeah.
a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But I prefer not. I prefer to keep my work separate from my pleasures.
But of course, but you look at your paintings, but your frames that you come up with make people look at your frames as much as your art.
Well, when you're framing something and you
Or
have
you consider it art too.
you have scraps, it's definitely sculptural art, and you're creating your frame. You get a piece of plywood, cut it out, and start gluing these bits and pieces
That's right,
down,
yeah.
the triangles that fall off of the end with the saw, and then one thing leads to another, and then you start mosaicing, and you throw a few mosaics in, and you start cutting the mosaics and making patterns from Indian blankets and things like that. The same patterns, but in mosaics, and then you do a big mosaic, like I've done 2 big mosaics for the Grimaldi Forum in Monaco
Exactly,
that are like 22 feet by 22 feet. They're huge,
Yeah, exactly.
and they weigh a ton.
Yeah. Now, some of your art is sort of X-rated a little bit, isn't it?
Well, it was in the 70s.
Did anybody ever try to
68.
get on to you for what some of the art that you put out there?
My grandmothers did.
Yeah.
And they said, "What do you do?" I said, look, you had your life and you used it.
Yeah.
You either produce children, I'm producing drawings.
Well, and of course, again, the beauty of his art is just everywhere. Once you go into the museum on Troy University's campus, it's the old cafeteria, and I don't think they could have done anything more exciting than to make that an art museum. And I know you're proud of it.
I think that Janice Hawkins came to me and she said, we're building a new cafeteria. What do you think we should do with the old one? I said, art museum. And she said, well, what are we going to put in it? I said, I'll give you anything you want. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, exactly. And because a lot of it's very adult, and at the same time.
Well, it's human.
And then at the same time, he takes tennis shoes and makes art out of tennis shoes, out of fishing tackle. Man, I wish I had some of that tackle. I started, but how do you come up with running shoes and tennis shoes?
Well, if you can
staple
it or tack it onto a board, if you can glue it, then it's it's free to use.
What is this knack that you have? Are you seeing more things than most people? When you look at something, do you see more than what we persuade?
I'm a frustrated architect, so instead of buildings, I do compositions and start collaging things into it to satisfy that building. Then you draw something, so you're doing a drawing, and then you're building the frame around it. And
with lights on it. Now, I'm not an expert, but I know what is so good looking. And you go to the Renaissance in Montgomery, and go to the hotel in Fairhope, and all these places where a lot of your art is. It's beautiful.
Mirrors,
And
reflections.
all. Exactly. And it's beautiful. I mean, your art is beautiful. I mean,
Thank you.
It is decorative, very decorative.
I love it. I love doing it because it gives me an emotion. When I was first, I saw a building. Where was it? In India. It was the Imperial Palace in Jaipur, I think, and the ceiling of the roof is sculpted in plaster or concrete, and they have inset mirrors in the plaster. These beautiful geometric designs, and they put mirrors, and it's just like it's fabulous. And that kind of told me, what you should do is to create something with the mirrors and with the plaster and with the wood and with the frames. And once you get into when you're inside of a medium, the creativity goes crazy.
Yeah, it's unreal. It's unreal. Now, let me ask this. I know growing up, you had to have people that inspired you and were good role models. Start from the early, being in Troy up. People that really inspired you. Are you inspired right now to paint?
Yeah. I'm inspired to, if you want, inspire young artists. I'm inspired to do frames. My hands shake too much to actually do the tight drawings that I used to do, which I don't regret because I've done enough. I've got thousands of drawings and watercolors that have not been framed, and the students can't draw that well, but they can frame. So I get my students to make some frames, and if they have talent, then I get them to, the apprentices, I'll say, would you like for me to teach you how to draw? And they would say, yeah. And then they realize.
So you love to teach.
I love to teach.
Yeah, and of course that's what you're going to be doing here in Troy. How long will you be here?
I'm leaving tomorrow.
But today you'll lecture, is that right?
I do a lecture and then I do a demonstration with Ed Noriega and Greg Skaggs, and who are great friends. We've become friends. They've come down to Fairhope and visit, and you know, they can ask anything, and I will, yeah.
Is your, you know, in Mobile or in Fairhope, is that open to the public, your facility?
Well, the Eastern Shore Arts Center has just given me a huge room that I can hang my Alabama art and all the collection that I've been doing for years and years. I'm donating that. I've donated Alice in Wonderland to them, the whole series. I'm donating a whole nother 30 pieces to the Eastern Shore Arts Center.
Oh, man.
They'll make that an all museum as well.
That is fabulous. And, you know, that's amazing to me, you know, all of the art. Are you just tireless? Do you put out art every day? I mean, did it take you longer with some art than others?
Well, you know, it's not only being a one-man show. You have to do the artwork, then you have to organize it, then you have to catalog it, and then I produce books.
Yeah.
So I have to do the layout of the books. I have to choose the photographs, have them made by professionals, bring those, place them out in the layout, and then correct everything, you know.
I
And by
remember when you were here and had your, you know, were here for several months, and every time I go by there, you were just tirelessly into the night. I mean, you just seemed like you had unlimited energy. Do you still have that kind of energy?
outside of naps, yeah.
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 You know, now Dolly inspired you, I'm sure, but at the same time, who do you, if you could think of 2 or 3 people that really made Noel who he is today, who would it be?
Richard Brough from the University of Alabama. And
The art teacher up at Alabama?
Yeah. And Al Sella when I was in college.
Yeah.
They inspired me. Mary Painter I think in Birmingham, she inspired me. These are some of the people that come to mind when I think of people that I appreciate of helping me.
Well, let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen. You talk about Alabama art, and a lot of these artists were just dormant as far as them being known throughout the country. But you gave them all a name and all this popularity. I mean, my wife, you know, loves art. We've got several of your paintings, and then we've got several of paintings that belong to. Let me get this real quick.
Yeah.
You're on Today in L.A. How you doing?
Hi.
We got Noel Hollis here this morning, Mike Amos. He's calling from Grayton Beach, Florida, one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Oh, I love Grayton Beach.
And of course, Noel is here. We're talking art this morning. He called me up at 5:30 this morning. He said, "Are you coming to get me?" And I didn't look at the clock at the time. I said, "Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes." Whoa! We got up early. We've been up early this morning.
You didn't have your Carol Amos phone call to wake you up every morning?
Yeah, well, it came up later. But Noel, thank goodness, called me back later. But we've had a whole hour of Noel, and it's been fun. And
I was watching y'all this morning on Facebook.
see, he's down there. And how's it gone? Is it gone pretty well?
Yeah, it looked good on Facebook.
Yeah.
I was missing Noel's headdress he had on last time.
Yeah,
Well, you
no,
know, I
that's
forgot
right.
it. I forgot it.
And that was wonderful.
Mike said, be sure to bring the headdress, and I walked off without it.
We still have that tape. You got a copy of that tape, didn't you?
I'm sure I do.
And of course, that was what was the significance of the chief? The
You know,
headdress. That was
you don't
unique.
ask
It was
people,
unique.
You do not ask people with dementia questions, Michael.
Noel said he had Indian blood, Dad.
Oh, I know it.
I do. Sure I do.
Wow, 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 wow. Peace. Yeah, I grew up with this guy, and
When Noel went to Alabama, did he ever do a painting of Bear Bryant?
No, I didn't.
of course,
No.
Brian, but you probably knew Mary
I
Harmon,
didn't.
didn't you?
Well, he was a Sigma Nu, and I was a Sigma Nu, and
Okay.
his son, Little Paul, was a Sigma Nu as well. So we had a relationship. Yeah.
And being from Troy didn't hurt, did it?
No.
See, Mary Harmon is from Troy, and you
Being
know,
from Troy has never hurt.
that's right. It really hadn't, had it?
No.
This is a town. I tell people all the time, this town is very unique. It's got a lot of unique people. Bud Casey, who used to be on the show and good friend, and he said, Mike, I've been everywhere. Never have I met more unique people than Troy, Alabama.
Well, my best friends in Fairhope are from Troy.
Yeah.
The Hendricks
Yeah, the
head,
Hendricks, yeah, exactly.
heads and
Exactly.
Murphys.
Bay and
Ken.
Camille was a dear friend of ours, and what
Yeah.
a beautiful lady she was.
She was a great friend. She moved down there
Yeah.
as well.
And also, the little Henderson girl lives down there. And the Dunn girl lives down there.
Ann Henderson.
Ann,
she
yeah,
lives,
Ann,
I think
beautiful
she lives
girl.
on the beach
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, Randy Brown lives about 5 miles from me.
And they're cousins. Randy's your cousin.
Randy's my second cousin.
Yeah. Now tell him where Randy lives now.
He lives in Santa Rosa Beach, just about 5 miles from Creighton.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought he lived in Birmingham.
No, he lives down on the beach now.
I've got to look
His
him
son,
up.
His son started a big roofing business after Hurricane Michael called Citadel Roofing, and Randy's down here
Who,
helping
Mark?
out.
That's
Martin?
right, Mark. That's right.
Martin Brown does?
Not Martin. Martin's in the banking business in Birmingham, but Mark Brown is
Mark and Trot, his two
that's
youngest.
right.
Okay.
You need to
Well,
go
I don't
see
know.
them.
They were a little younger than
That's
than
right.
the other.
And of course, Randy, a good friend of ours, and of course, he was a backdoor neighbor of your Aunt Lucy, and then his grandmama lived on in the
My
Span
great
house.
aunt. My great aunt did.
That's right, the great aunt lived in the Span house.
Well, we like to call it the McSwain
And
house.
that's right. And the storm hit that, and my dear friend, and I wish you'd go by to see him. Jim O'Neill still lives in the old Henderson house.
Huh.
And he was sitting there eating breakfast. He said, I was sitting there eating my cereal, and then I looked over to my right, and the top of the Span house was coming down.
Oh, really?
Where Jerry Span had lived at that time, but that, like you said,
In
that
the
was
tower.
The tower. But you know what? They found a contractor that could put it back, and he put it back, and it's better than ever.
Well, I went by and it looked good.
You're right, it really does.
Yeah.
But the storm that hit us, almost dilapidated.
Huh.
But Jim is still sitting there. I know he's watching this show this morning. You know Jim O'Neill.
Probably.
That's George D. Gooddeal O'Neill's brother, little brother.
I forget the people that were my intimate friends.
That's right, no question about it.
Unfortunately.
And of course, how you made these Alabama artists famous.
Well, I didn't make them famous. They were already well known. And Georgine Clark, who was the head of the State Council of the Arts in the art department, she wrote a list of people because I told her, I said, I want to do a celebration of Alabama artists to share them with Europe and share them around because I don't know who they are even. And she gave me a list, and I contacted these artists and got to know them, and then chose the ones that I
Name
preferred.
some of them, Mike. Now, do you see Nall's art down in South in Mobile area a lot? Don't you?
Well, I mean, I live in Creighton. I'm not sure. I mean, I know that my wife had friends in Birmingham who definitely had Nall's art. Her former boss was
it's
Of
Beverly
course, Randy's
McNeil.
got one of your best pictures.
The one of him with the roaches crawling over.
Exactly right. That was one of them. But the one.
Beverly McNeil had a gallery
Yeah.
down here, and then she also had Portraits Inc. In Birmingham. I know she had some of Nall's work.
Yeah, I worked with her for many years.
Isn't that amazing?
She was
She
my
was a blunt.
she was my girlfriend, Margaret McNeil's cousin. Well, she married her brother,
Exactly.
Johnny McNeil.
And her brother was a pretty wealthy guy named Blunt.
They were
Was
all
she a
wealthy.
Blunt, Mike?
Yeah, she was. Her husband started Kelly Plantation, and then her son
Isn't that
started the
amazing?
Henderson
Yeah.
Resort.
And then his son started the Henderson Resort, and that's part of the old Henderson clan from Troy, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
sure it was.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It's amazing how Troy...
They're all cousins.
That's right, they're all cousins. And see, he's related on the Carroll side of Ozark, too, Mike, and that's another one. In fact, they've...
Does Noel Hollis watch the Super Bowl? Did you watch the game, Noel?
Do you know I watched half of it? The first half.
Yeah.
And then when it was
What'd you think? That was an unbelievable finish.
The quarterback's almost like a miracle worker. I mean, I don't know how in the world they came back and did what
when
they
it was
did.
13 to 10.
San Francisco is up by 10 points with 8 minutes to go.
That's right.
And Kansas City wins by 11.
Well, when San Francisco got ahead of Kansas City, and it was 13-10, I said, we got this one in the bag. So I quit watching it and did something else.
No, Mike, we're talking art this morning, and of course, you know, some of those famous, what is it, Mike, one of your mother's famous paintings, and you've got a couple of them.
Of Knowles?
No,
not
we're
Knowles,
talking
but
to
Alabama
you.
Art.
Yeah.
Mom's really into Moe's Tea stuff.
Moe's Tea.
I
See,
have
you
a
made Moe's-
huge collection of Moe's
I know, but
tea.
you made Moe's Tea famous, though.
It
You
was
really
Randy
did.
Trotman that introduced me to Moe's Tea.
Yeah.
I introduced Moe's Tea to Anton Hart from Montgomery.
Sure.
And then I did the books and put Moe's Tea in my
Yeah.
books. Anton did a book on him. So
You
it
made him
really
famous.
it grew from Randy Trotman's introducing us to Moe's Tea's
Now,
work.
we've got quite a bit of Moe's Tea, and it's they're worth a lot of money.
They are worth a lot of money. Well, you know, I just had somebody come down and photograph all of my work, and we were going through all of them, checking the prices in like $3,000, $4,000, $10,000. And I said, well, you know, I bought that one.
Yeah.
$2.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Mike, we've given you Moe's Tea, and Camille, my daughter, Camille, named sort of.
Yeah.
You know, Carol
Yeah.
grew up across the
Uh-huh.
street from Camille, but in Birmingham, she's got quite a bit. But let me ask you this. You know, you look at all these great artists, and they all had to have a beginning, and you have them. But ladies and gentlemen, there was a lady down in Brundage, Alabama, and when Noel was working here at the university for that period of
Betty
time.
Sue.
And
Betty Sue
Betty Sue
Matthews.
Matthews. And Mike, he took a Betty Sue Matthews thing and made her very. I mean, you own a lot of Betty Sue.
I've got maybe 2,000.
We have a bunch. Do you really? She did that kind of work, and of course we got some. Doug Hawkins had a lot of Betty Sue.
Well, you know, she started doing tin cutouts.
Yeah.
Because she said,
Metal cutout.
no, I need me some tin. I need cardboard. I need all this paper.
yeah.
And I would drive them over to her when I was in Troy. And then we'd go and get tin, and she said, I need some scissors. And so I get her some metal scissors,
Yeah.
and she'd cut these things
Isn't that
out.
amazing?
And started doing all this stuff. So I feel part of her work.
Yeah. Is her work valuable?
It's not terribly valuable,
But
but at least she was able to live from
Yeah,
her work.
You know, we all miss Doug.
Mom likes that Tin Man. What is it, Charlie Lucas?
Charlie Lucas,
Yeah.
I have been part of his career too.
I mean, my son's talking about him. I mean, the household words. You made these guys household words.
Well, no, I participate.
That's right, but you put them on the map. No, like Dolly put you on the map, you know.
I mean, how old was Betty Sue Matthews when she started painting? I mean, was this later in life?
She was scratching around with her. She had 2 rows of toes on each foot. She had 20 toes. And she would use her big toe, the bottom big toe, and she would do a drawing in the dirt. And I went over there because I saw something in the Troy Messenger about Betty Sue Matthews that Jane Treadwell did an interview with her. And Janice Hawkins and my wife and I drove over to Brundage and found her on the railroad tracks. And I took a photograph of her toes and then bought all the paintings she had done and had stacks of them and bought all the
Well,
stuff.
either Doug Hawkins or Ron Drinkard. You know Ron Drinkard. You know, Ron bought a lot of her stuff.
Rob?
No, Ron.
Ron
His
Drinkard.
uncle, yeah, Ron.
Okay.
He got his place up at the lake.
So when you're a collector, you collect everything you can
exactly.
get of any artist
Well,
that you
tell
like.
us exactly what you hope to accomplish today at Troy
Today,
University.
seeing you and giving a lecture to the students on what I've done in my life
Yeah,
and how I did this and how I got to meet all these people.
yeah. And let me tell you, we're going to eat breakfast this morning at Bird Drugs on the corner of downtown Troy. You know, the wonderful place to eat breakfast. And, of course, good old sausage, link sausage, and that bacon. And
Come buy me a biscuit.
exactly. And,
Feed
and we
the
want
starving
you to come
artist.
by and see this starving artist, Noel Hollis, at Bird Drugs today. And, of course, you know, the thing I love about you, Noel, and you and I go way back, and we've kept our friendship regardless of how famous you've been. We've always been friends. But, is your love for Troy.
Yeah.
Your love for Troy. You promote Troy everywhere you go. Even in Europe, you said, I'm from Troy, Alabama. You didn't tell them you were from Birmingham. You said you were from Troy or Arab.
CNN says, what is your story? I say, well, I was born and raised in Troy, Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. And Jerry and Patsy this morning, I hope that they're watching our show. Jerry Hollis, and of course, Jerry later played for Sonny Queen's football team. He's guard, and Buddy Brantley was the other guard, and the tackles with Jim Colley, and of course the other tackle was Columbus Patman. Tom Murphy was the quarterback.
I really didn't keep up with football.
Oh, I know that.
I would go down there and play, and I'd run back in the back door of Jerry's mother's house, and I would say, "They're after me! They're after me!" So what? And I would throw down my helmet and throw down the ball. I would run out with the ball.
Exactly, yeah.
And she said, "Who's after you?" I said, "The football team. They're trying to get me."
Well, Patsy and Kathy Campbell are sisters.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful people. Wonderful people.
I know. I'm friends with both of them.
And of course, our president also with Patsy, and she's a wonderful person. And of course, I know you're proud of your heritage and.
Absolutely.
But how did you come up with some of the paintings that you did? You say, what is this guy thinking about? I mean, it's like you're visualizing something that very few people have ever seen.
Well, everybody adds to everybody's memory, to their makeup.
Yeah.
Talking to you, I get inspiration. Talking to people, the telephone ringing, talking to you, Mike.
That's right.
And everybody that you talk to, if you're alert, if you're listening.
Exactly.
If you see, then everything is inspiration.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you say, oh, I get my inspiration from this or from that? I get it from everywhere.
You're highly motivated.
And very emotional, so excuse. And then my eyes water.
No, do you love Jesus?
I love Jesus, sure. He's my hero.
See, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, he's way back, but the Lord Jesus Christ means everything to you, doesn't he?
Do you know, I've been to India, I have been to ashrams, I've been to mosques.
Open up. No.
Mosques.
You're going out to 1 billion people this morning on Facebook.
And to me, all of the religions are essential to keep
you talk to
the
God
rain
a lot. When you're doing your painting, you talk to, is God going through your mind a lot?
All day, every day.
Would he be pleased by what you do?
He's here right now.
That's right.
He's omnipresent.
No question about it, no.
Yeah, and so, but...
I'm glad people know that Noel is a Christian.
I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Hindu. Every religion that I've visited has been important.
How many different languages do you speak?
My sister spoke 6 or 7. I speak 2. That's it.
Well, you speak
3.
French and...
Spanish and English.
Exactly.
That's it.
Does he speak Alabama?
I can speak Alabama.
Yeah,
Are you
exactly.
kidding?
I guarantee
Are you
he's part of
kidding,
the
boy?
Crimson Tide. There ain't no question about it, Mike. He was born and raised that way. And, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a wonderful, wonderful morning this morning talking to the great artist Noel, and from his early days at Troy Elementary School to the days that he spent in Birmingham and Arab and the University of Alabama, where you really got your niche, evidently, is where you really exploded after you left the University of Alabama and you were able to go and study abroad. Do you feel like you'd be the artist today if you had not studied abroad?
If I had missed any step of my career, I would not be the artist.
Let me ask this. Where would you be doing your work this morning? Do you know?
At the center, the art center.
At the museum, is that
International
right?
Art Center.
And would you welcome people to come by and see
Oh,
you?
I wish you would. Please come.
We would love for you to drop by there. Now, you'll be there from what
I'll
time?
be giving from 1 o'clock until I guess about 2, and then again from maybe 4 till 5. I'm not sure.
Exactly.
Because I forget time.
Yeah. And I tell you something, old Noel and you always love a good meal, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to eat breakfast this morning, and we want you to come by down and join us this
Bird
morning.
drugs.
Joe, if you're around, Joe Hollis and
Jerry.
Tom Murphy and some of those guys that know the family, and we're just so proud that you were here with us today.
Dad's Bird Drugs on the downtown Troy's best customer. He goes every day.
That's right. You're exactly right. If it does say Bird Drugs for breakfast, you don't want it. We'll be down there in just about 15 minutes or less, and we'll be there to eat breakfast. See you then.
Thanks, Mike.
This show can be seen on Facebook across the world.
Good.
I mean, all day long.
How do I click onto it?
All right, you go to TC2. You go to that's Troy Cable.
Yeah.
2.
Okay.
All right. Once you go to Facebook, you go to TC2 on your Facebook, and that will it is right there. TC2.
Got it.
And you can even talk to your friend or your ex-wife over in Europe.
And I can put that on Constant Contact, send it out.
I would think so, yeah. Oh yeah, that Nall was on the show today. Mike, are you on? Of course we have people call us from Spokane, Washington, New York
Good.
City, and
Good.
they just found us on Facebook.
Huh.
We're live. And anytime you ever want to call in to us, we'd love to have you.
Thank you.
Put that number right there down, 670-334-670-0052. And we're on every weekday morning from 7 o'clock to 8:30. And then my number, cell number, and hey, Jacqueline and Caroline, I'll come down to see you if you ever invite us.
Well, y'all are always welcome.
We'd love to see your art.
You're always welcome.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, I need to know how to get up with you because we'd love to do it.
All right. Well,
Basically,
that's easy enough to do.